I remember going to the post office, writing a money order.
Oh, wow.
And sending that off to some random
Into the
dude
void.
in America.
What?
And then 3 months later, a VHS tape had arrived in my mailbox, which contained the end of Evangelion on it.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Gateway to Anime. How are you all? What's going on? We are the podcast where we try and throw open the gates to anime, whether you're a new fan, an old fan, a returning fan, ever wanted to get into anime but didn't know where to start. We're the podcast for you, but if you're an old fan wanting to get into the reads, we'll provide that for you as well. Charlie, how you going?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about some, some history of Australian anime lore, which I'm excited to get into. So, this is stuff that really directly affected me growing up here. So I'm keen to kind of get the backstory of everything. So you'll see when you get to our special guest.
We just go to Graham. How are you, mate?
Not as psyched. I know nothing about Australianisms. I'm from my own land. I have my own culture. Nothing a cheese TV. No. It's going to be interesting. I'm keen to learn.
It is an exciting time. Well, yes. So today we have Sly Ip, who is an absolute anime industry veteran in this country, someone who has really been there since the start. And starts depends on
close.
Relative if you want to get with that term, but been involved in the industry for a very long time, has seen it grow from a tiny little sapling to the giant tree that it is today. But of course, I will stop speaking for you. And Sly Ip, currently General Manager of Media at Sugoi Co and ex-Madman. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Mate, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. So, as I mentioned before, you've been involved in the anime industry for quite some time. First of all, before you got involved in the industry, how did you get into anime at all?
That was my gateway into anime, I guess.
What was your gateway to anime?
You got us.
Look, I guess my journey really started, life story very, very shortly, born in Hong Kong, moved to Australia about 91. Whilst growing up in Hong Kong, kind of exposed to a lot of Japanese culture, anime, especially on TV. That was probably where I was really first exposed to anime, I guess. Unconsciously, I guess, as we all were kids, here, you probably like Astro Boy and stuff like that when you were growing up. And then sort of when I was in my teens, I was sort of like, should get back into doing something like, cool. And that kind of connected back to Asia somehow. And, as it is, migrant teen in Australia, you have a bit of an identity crisis.
For sure.
And I found that anime was those gateways back in. And it kind of really kicked off properly back around 1999 when Neon Genesis Evangelion was on TV on SBS. And I think a lot of other people, for a massive generation of people around my age, grew up. That was like their gateway into anime was either on TV 8:30 p.m. on SBS on Saturday night, but also prior to that would have been like the SBS movies with Des Mangan, Ghost in the Shell, Akira, and Ninja Scroll.
Yes,
all those kind of like anime classics. That's, I would say, where I was first exposed to it really, and then Eva was probably the first TV experience that I was kind of really exposed to. And then it just kind of went down the rabbit hole kind of from there. And, I was doing things like, going to, as in my background from Hong Kong, going to like the VHS rental stores in like, the Chinatowns and all that kind of stuff and renting tapes. My Cantonese is not great, but at least you kind of you're seeing things that you haven't seen before, and you're exposing yourself to different types of anime. Back in the day, where fan subs were a thing.
Yes.
I remember going back to the whole thing about Evangelion being my gateway. Of course, SBS only really aired the TV series, and as we all know, those last two episodes were
old movies.
Yeah, and then you kind of dig into it. Early days of the internet, you dig into it, and you're like, oh, there's these two movies. Like, how do I get a hold of them? Where are they available? And I remember when it was in '99, and either blown up because it was available on DVD and I think VHS in Japan around the time. So I remember going to the post office, writing a money order,
Oh, wow.
and sending that off to some random
Into the
dude
void.
in America.
What?
And then 3 months later, a VHS tape had arrived in my mailbox, which
Wow.
contained the end of Evangelion on it.
Holy crap. That is wild.
Yeah, so that was sort of one of my journey into really getting into the depths of
Yeah.
exploring what's available and getting into, I guess, the fandom of it.
Yeah.
That was part one. Part two was also then I was like, okay, how else can I see this thing? Anime clubs.
Right.
Old school university anime clubs.
Yeah.
And I think the anime UNSW was screening Evangelion, I think Death and Rebirth as well at one point. And I was like, I have to go and see this. And, 16-year-old going in, and it's like mum's like, dropping me off at this university. I'm going to this random dark room to watch anime. and also
Anime this way, kids.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's a room full of people and I know nobody.
Wow.
And, 16, 17 years old going like, just, wow, what is happening here? And I'm like, I have to read subtitles as well because it's, obviously
Yeah.
everyone is exposed to English dub at the time. But then you're like, oh, subtitles, cool. I guess I'll get used to reading it. And you do, because as the journey goes with, I guess, exploring anime around the time, VHS tapes was one option, and of which the anime clubs back then would have a catalog of this stuff.
Wow.
They'd all bought this stuff from the US or, done their own subtitling, and, you learn about the way that they do things on VHS fan subs, stuff like gen locking and, using the subtitle software and everything else.
Wow.
And they would have a library of tapes where you could then, if you're a member, you sign up and then you can borrow the tapes essentially for free to just, watch it. And then you would go back to the next meeting and you would return your tape and, get the next one. And so you can kind of like, watch it. And that's kind of how you discover things.
Yep.
I mean, really the step before that was you go into a Blockbuster or Video Easy. Whatever they had, I would take.
Yep.
And there was not a lot.
Yep.
You had your things like your Street Fighter anime, your Fatal Fury anime, and a couple of OVAs here and there, and like Ranma, and that was kind of about it.
Wow.
So then you discover about this company called Madman because of Evangelion, and then the small catalog they had then as well, and you're like you try to pick up everything, which was possible back then. You could pick up every single release every month if you wanted to. Wow. I guess that's sort of where my journey down this deep dark hole has been.
It's a bit of despair.
Almost 30 years later, I'm still here and
And going strong. So obviously you mentioned Madman, where of course you did work, and we want to talk about that. So I'll let you explain to people who might not be aware, but Madman are very much the reason animes in this country, in Australia. I mean, Ghost in the Shell, I believe, was their first ever release, or at least close to it.
No, actually, the first release was Bubblegum Crisis 2032.
Yes.
My favorite.
Yeah, on VHS.
Yes.
Wow.
And also Riding Bean. That's probably an anime no one's ever heard of.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Now I've
a
challenge
really,
accepted.
Yeah, it's a really old OVA. By technical terms, my boss tells me this. I'm like the historian guy. That was the first release of the company, like the legitimate, unimported. It was just like licensed and released locally, and Power VHS kind of release was Bubblegum Crisis 2032.
Nice.
Wow, that was it.
Yeah, and that was around November 1997.
Oh,
They were
my
the first anime DVDs I ever bought.
Really?
Like they were Bubblegum Crisis, because you couldn't buy anything
Interesting.
in the UK. Like similar here, UK,
Yeah.
you could buy nothing.
Yeah, Manga UK.
But Bubblegum Crisis,
yeah.
that was the one that was just available everywhere. You're like, well, I've got to buy this.
Yeah,
It was on SBS as well, wasn't it? Bubblegum Crisis later?
The other one. The
other one.
2040. Yeah, the one from 96. Yeah, where they kind of like, it was like kind of a sequel, but not really. And it was kind of a reboot kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't understand what was going on
No, no,
anyway,
no.
so it's fine. I was like sneaking up to watch it late at night and being like, this looks so cool. I have no idea what's happening.
Because you would watch anything, right? Because it was literally the only thing that was available.
Yep.
So you're like, oh yeah, yes, I like cyberpunk, and I'll get into it. That was, but you were, in terms of the first release, Ghost in the Shell was the first DVD that was ever released in Australia.
Right. Okay.
So that is correct in a way, but yeah, the first release was VHS.
Wow.
And that was Bubblegum Crisis 2032.
Wow, Crow. Deep cut.
Yep.
And then, of course, the show that you were watching and your gateway into anime was also licensed
Yes.
and released by Madman,
By Madman.
which is, of course, Neon Genesis.
Yes, so late high school, I'm like, oh, this anime thing's really cool, and then wondering about as you do in year 11 or 12, what you think about what do you want to do after school, and I was like, get into university, maybe learn some Japanese and all that kind of stuff. I didn't get good enough grades to go to university. So ended up at TAFE, but then at the same time, I was like, I wanted to pursue this anime thing. And what had happened with me was how I really got to know the Madman guys. I went to an old convention at the Horton Pavilion in 2001 called Comic Fest, which is now known as Supernova.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
So before it was Supernova, it was known as Comic Fest. Right. And the Madman guys were there. Sean Schemmel and Chris Sabat were there.
Yes.
And met them and kind of got to know them as well and all that kind of thing. But it was like the Madman guys were there, and that was kind of cool. We kind of met them, and then the journey kind of went on from there. Fast forward to about 2002, I somehow managed to become the admin for the forums of there used to be a forum.
Explain what a forum is to the children.
So basically, think of it like Reddit. Think of it like Reddit, except it was hosted on the Madman website, a thing called the Mad Boards.
The Mad Boards.
The Mad Boards, just a community of, mad anime fans all talking about things. And, through that journey of Evangelion and everything else, and like, oh, okay, cool. You post about stuff, and somehow I became an admin of the forums. And then around that time, I was like, okay, there's this thing called conventions, like where you kind of get together on a weekend and things would happen and you get to get together and cosplay and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, cool, that's in Melbourne. Oh, the Madman office is in Melbourne. Hey guys, can I come into the office and do some free work experience for you guys for a week? And they were like, yeah, cool, come on down. I did scanning of VHS covers for an entire week.
Wow.
Because they needed it for their database that they had, the internal kind of like intranet database that they had, to upload like pictures so that it would then get sent out to all the different like retailers and stuff.
Oh my God.
Cool.
So that was kind of my first exposure to, I guess, the industry and how the inner workings of Madman was.
Yeah.
Through that, I'd shown that I was like, got some knowledge and some, I guess, I don't know, just I kind of willed it to existence.
Yeah.
Worked for them for part-time for a little bit, and then because I was based in Sydney at the time, and then around 2004 I'd kind of graduated from TAFE and got my diplomas and everything else, and I was like, okay, I need to do something now and actually maybe get a job for the first time. Talked to Tim Anderson, who's the CEO, the founder of Madman. He was like, yeah, Sly, come on down, we'll start you off in this basic salary and see how you go. And I was product and marketing coordinator. That was my first role in 2004.
Wow.
So, around that time, it was just getting in there. And then just, as that was happening, more and more DVDs were coming out at the time. Things were kind of blowing up. And DVDs in general were really blowing up around that time. And golden age of DVDs.
Totally.
And you used to get away with selling 3 episodes for $34.95, which was a luxury for us back then, because it's like I don't have to go to places like again, a little bit of rewind.
You have to go into someone's basement to watch anime.
Or you would go to this place in Sydney called the Cartoon Gallery.
Cartoon Gallery.
Oh yeah, they were an OG shop, and they were basically one of the first shops in Sydney that would sell you legitimate anime goods.
Right.
Imported US DVDs and things like that. I used to pay $70 Australian dollars for 3 episodes of something on the DVD.
Jesus.
Wow.
And I'd have to, this is after investing in an all-region DVD player and a TV that supported NTSC as well.
Yep.
Of course.
That was how it was back then. So you have a very small catalog, and what you could get was what we would hold on to.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, but yeah, fast forward back to sort of that Madman, and kind of worked my way up the company, and eventually was the product and marketing manager.
So I guess what a lot of people don't understand from, especially nowadays with the internet being just, click on Crunchyroll and bam, you've got as much anime as you can imagine, bar like 2 titles, I guess, the level of effort that had to be gone to get this media was crazy.
Yeah, you kids don't know how hard. As I've kind of just explained to you guys, just to understand how hard it was to even get exposed to what anime was. All you had to go through previously, you didn't have anything else like myanimelist.com. It was literally some random fan website hosted on like GeoCities or something like that.
Angel Fire.
Yeah, or Angel Fire, or some random forum somewhere, and you would be like, "Oh, you seen a picture of that," and then you'd be like, "Oh, this is coming out this season." And there's, you also look. Admittedly, back in the day, it wasn't like crazy how it is now. You have 50 new shows a season.
Yeah,
you get maybe a dozen shows a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then you have this back catalogue of the VHS kind of golden age in Japan as well, and kind of discovering all these kind of old anime. And then also as well, you'd be like, okay, what else is actually out there? And that's kind of where the fan subs kind of came in. So, like I said, have to buy a VHS and writing a random money order from Australia Post to send it off to some random person in America that you don't know if you're ever going to get something back at the end of it.
Of course. So,
distribution was a massive thing, and discovery was also a massive thing that was very hard, I think, back in the day for a lot of fans. No mainstream exposure. All you had was whatever you saw on Agra's Cartoon Connection and Cheese TV. Those were it. That's why Dragon Ball Z blew up.
100%.
So that's why Sailor Moon blew up. It was because of the morning cartoon shows.
Absolute. Pokemon.
That's how it blew up. And from there you'd be like, okay, what's the other kind of stuff? The more kind of subculture kind of stuff. And you were really a cool kid. I'd like to think myself as a cool kid back in the day when you could tell someone, I found this thing that's cool. You can't see it on Cheese TV. You had almost like a sense of pride that you 100%. Could. It's almost like it's the same as like video games as well, right? Because you used to import games from Japan and a year ahead of everybody else. Yep. Yeah, you'd have to sit there with like an FAQ. Here's what I used to do as a kid as well, buying Japanese video games. And then you would be like, okay, you go online, I think GameFAQs.com, and you would print out walkthroughs
done that.
of guides so you can at least follow on what's going on in the game.
Translation. Wow. That is,
So from that, you go to the days of, VHS distribution where it was still fairly limited, but, enough video stores were around that you could at least get some exposure to things. To then the real boom was, in the 2000s with the DVD boom.
Yes.
And then, arguably with the rise of, I guess, the digital fan subs as well at the time.
Oh, my God.
Can I tell you how, as a consumer of it back in the day as well, downloading anime on dial-up was torture.
On LimeWire.
You kids don't really know.
Download a 40 megabit episode would take you hours.
It was like, okay, there's a 40 megabyte episode, Rurouni Kenshin. I was like, oh, look, it's only 40 megabytes. That's like 10 MP3s. I can do that on a dial-up connection. Just leave it on overnight.
You're doing 128 kilobits a second.
128. That's a luxury. That's
I was bowling.
That's a nice that's a nice DN line.
All right.
128. Oh my God.
The amount of viruses and computers must have destroyed. Like the family computer, just 100 episodes in Naruto. Ruined.
I'm pretty certain I watched Oran High School Host Club for the first time on my friend's iPod. I'm pretty certain.
Oh, the iPod video with the tiny screen?
Like the tiny thing, and she'd managed to get it on there. And then soon after that, it was the time where people were uploading on YouTube, but it was like part 1.
Yeah.
And then you'd be like invested, and then part 3 wouldn't exist, or it got taken down, and you were like, no.
So we went from those days to like, okay, cable internet and like, the early days of like, DSL, you'd be like, okay, cool. You'd have to go on these things called IRC servers, which essentially is the modern day Discord.
Totally.
But then you'd have to find the right server and then type in all these commands and /xdcc and space blah blah blah, and then somehow somebody would magically send you a file. This bot would send you a file. This is in 2002. This is like 99, 2000, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
From that, the spread of like DivX and that was
Yes.
a real big
DivX,
thing.
my God.
DivX was a thing that that really sped up, I guess, the piracy of anime. Or the,
Yes.
but at the same time, a lot of new shows came out because of that you would not have been exposed to otherwise.
It's an interesting point you make there because obviously piracy, especially these days, hurts so many media companies and creators and so many, it hurts the industry badly. But you can make a very strong argument that anime would not be what it is in the West without piracy.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Look, Crunchyroll started off as a piracy website.
It did.
It sure did. It absolutely did.
Crunchy subs, like
Yeah,
in the yellow. Missed that days.
but you always have to appreciate it as well. Where in a way the fans could at least, as a business, you're like, well, you've got a test market telling you
Yes.
what's good and what's not.
Yes.
You could do that. These days, you literally have, here's the title of the show and here's a sketch that someone's drawn.
Yeah.
Give us some money for it. It got to that point where you were literally getting nothing except for like a synopsis, or if you were lucky, a piece of key art, and you're like, this story is about this, and then you'd have to put a crazy offer in a year in advance of this thing coming out.
Wow.
Sight unseen. So we've gone a long way from doing that.
Absolutely.
From going to the DVD acquisition phase where you were still a year behind.
Sure.
But at the very least you could get a hold of some episodes to review and see the vibe and all that kind of stuff. To now where you're basically pre-buying shows before you even know about it.
Really?
You are probably not even hearing about shows that are getting licensed now
Wow.
because people are pre-buying it because they're being released in 2025, 2026.
Interesting. So, moving forward up, so the DVD phase was a key member. So,
I remember the DVD phase was like
Yeah.
a real game changer because I remember walking into JB Hi-Fi and turning a corner, and I'll never forget just seeing a sea of anime and DVD, like anime DVDs, and just being like, we did it, guys. We made it. Like, we're in the mainstream. And I remember just being like, because I spent so many years on IMDb forums talking about anime because there was an anime subsection for that. And then I guess other than that, there was 4chan, but I'd be too scared to go on 4chan. And that's obviously a great life decision I made there.
early choice.
But we're from Perth, Western Australia, and there was actually quite a strong anime club scene there as well, an anime convention scene. So I kind of got involved in high school with YCon and those conventions.
Jafwa,
which was, so that was the way in before that. But then I feel do we have you to thank for the anime DVD boom of 2006 onwards? Because
look, I was a lot more involved with it back then, I guess. Yeah, me and I guess Tim and Dean as well. The three of us would be, and Daniel as well. We would all be trading sort of this is good, that's not good. We think we should be paying this, we should be paying that, that kind of thing. And, the boom really kind of happened. I don't know if you guys heard about the bubble that happened in the US as well, in the US anime industry. Around 2000 and I guess, around 2006, a lot of crappy shows were coming out around that time. That was kind of when it exploded, right? Mm-hmm. It exploded, but at the same time, the quantity of crappy shows were also exploding at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Because people were overpaying for episodes in the US, and they were overproducing shows. It blew up, and the industry kind of had to pick itself up, and DVD as well, sort of on that 2009-ish kind of time where it kind of it's kind of really settled down as well. DVD was in its own, it was sort of in longer legs. Mm-hmm. But definitely, I think in the mid 2000s, you could feasibly get quality show. Every show that came out was fairly quality. We didn't have as much competition out here as well, because it was mainly us, Siren Visual, who then became also became Hanabi as well, eventually. And it was literally the 3-4 companies that were releasing things here. In the US, you'd had a dozen companies doing things, but we were cherry picking the good titles, so that they would do. In a way, they would do some of the hard yards for us in the US.
Yep.
Because they were picking up titles and they were competing and they were fiercely, overbidding on titles in a way. But that also created the anime industry that you kind of see as it is today.
Interesting.
is that how Ghost Stories happened? in America where they licensed it and then they were like, this show is a complete failure.
Oh,
Let's
Ghost
just
Hunt.
dub.
Yeah. Ghost Hunt. Yeah. It was. Yeah. Look, there were things like that happen because of that big sort of bubble back in the mid 2000s.
Is it your fault that I spent $40 on Black Cat? Was that your fault?
Partially, I would say yes.
A great disappointment of an anime movie.
It had cool moments.
It was okay. It was
it was solid.
solid B tier show. The kids get called mid these days.
I'm way too hard on Black Cat. I think I had such high expectations for it.
It was a train, wasn't he? Train
Yeah.
was, yeah. Yes,
He looked so cool.
It was it had a great aesthetic. Anyway.
I'll have to give it another watch and then let you know.
Dust off the DVD.
I will.
It's true. But that is interesting as well that now, obviously, so from there, of course, the proliferation of online streaming has changed everything for not only for consumers, but I imagine for distributors, licenses. Like, how did that, because obviously Anime Lab in Australia was, I mean, it became that later, but can you talk to us how you guys moved from the DVD time into the streaming time?
Yeah, look, I mean, back in, I think this is sort of around that, late 2000s, like 08, 09, where we decided, okay, this whole streaming thing is picking up. I think, Funimation were probably the first to start to do streaming back in the day, and obviously Crunchyroll as well. We were like, okay, Crunchyroll's doing this thing. Funimation started to do this thing. We were thinking ourselves here, okay, we need to kind of protect ourselves in order for us to kind of survive for the next 10 years of this next phase, that we need to go, what is beyond DVDs and what's beyond Blu-ray. Streaming was certainly that thing. It was always in the back of my minds that, this thing, it's happening. Netflix was happening around then as well. That was sort of the big rise of it. And, I think we could see the writing on the wall that, okay, if we don't move the business into that phase, then we are going to get left behind. So I think in 2009 was when we started to upload a lot of like back catalog episodes onto this thing called the Madman screening room. Back in the day, you would knew about it, and we would be streaming episodes here and there of old titles. And then in 2009, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood was the first simulcast that we did.
Wow.
Oh, wow. 2009.
2009.
Wow.
Damn. That's a good first simulcast.
That's a very great first simulcast.
Best
I
one,
remember
might
that.
say.
We're like, okay, wow, we got the rights and we have to do this every single week. I'm like, wow, okay. We have to figure things out on the fly of how do you encode episodes every week and download these gigantic files and all that kind of stuff. It just really moved into this new phase for the whole industry of having to do that and also keep it secure as well.
Of course.
From then on, it kind of built up, and Anime Lab was then kind of built on the back of, I guess, the Madman screening room, where you'd have a few years of experience. And then in 2014, we were like, okay, right, I think we've got enough that we can build a product out of it. So we launched Anime Lab around April 2014. That's 9 years ago. Oh my God, that's 9 years ago now.
Yeah. It's wild.
I loved Anime Lab.
We're talking.
We all loved
beforehand.
Anime Lab.
Anime Lab was
Yeah, it
amazing.
was
The UI
amazing.
was glorious.
Really, really good.
Missed.
Although back in the early days, look, it took a while for Anime Lab to get to where it was. I think where it was at the end of its life. But we were like, we wanted to offer something that was better than the rest, and we built everything in house as well. Wow. So shout out to the team that built that app from the ground up here in Australia. A team of 10 people, by the way.
That blows my mind.
Which is incredible to think about when you have multinationals doing, giant streaming platforms as well. And we're, comparable to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we were quite proud of our product, and it was a good talk of the town as well.
Yeah.
Around the industry, and we were very proud of what we had built.
Oh, of course. And then in 2019, obviously, Madman Anime was sold to Aniplex, and you stayed on for how much longer after that?
Yeah. So actually, the timeline was more like, so in 2018, I think we took on like an investment. Aniplex invested in us around that time, because around that time was also when we had also built this other thing. So at the same time that we were building Anime Lab, we were also building this other thing called Madman Anime Festival.
Right. Yes.
So I was a lot more involved in that, in building the convention up. And Aniplex, they saw that we're basically a completely, fully vertically integrated company, and they wanted to invest in everything.
Yep.
they invested in us in that, and then around it, I think it was around it, 2018, 19 was when they fully bought the anime side of the Madman business.
Yep.
So it's split off into Madman is now split off into two companies. One was the Madman Anime Group, and the other one is Madman Films, which still exists today, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I think they did stuff like Shin Ultraman early this year.
Oh, right.
That was them.
Nice.
So that's a plug. And then the anime business, the anime part of the group splintered off. And then about a year after that, so around the same time that we were kind of like acquired, Sony Pictures in the US. So Aniplex is a Sony Music Japan company. Like you have to look through the layers of it. Is that okay? Who owns Madman? It's now Aniplex of Japan.
Yeah.
Who owns Aniplex Japan? Sony Music Japan.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ocean, you had Sony Pictures, who bought out Funimation.
Right.
Ah, okay.
And around sort of the end of 2019, they basically said that, there's a Sony now saying like, hey, you guys are anime. You need to kiss and become one.
Come together.
So, the timeline is that basically, as part of the Aniplex group, we then had to, there was a few more companies as well at the time. Sure. So there was a company in Europe called Wakanim, based in France. They also had like, French Quebec, like that's a territory apparently.
Right.
Because like French speaking Canada is a country, like a region for anime.
Right.
I think like the Nordics as well. That's sort of where these companies were kind of like operating from. At the same time when Funimation was also acquired by Sony Pictures, Manga UK was also bought up by Funimation.
Right.
So that's why there was this thing of the US and the UK were kind of tied up in this one thing with Sony Pictures, and then Europe and Australia were tied up with Aniplex, and so they're like, well, you need to kind of become this one thing.
Right.
But I think we were very careful as well around that time, because I think there was also talk about back in Japan it was sort of like is this going to be okay and all that kind of thing. But the merge still happened anyway. And of course, we all know what happened back in 2020.
Yes.
Everything kind of shut down, but we were still in the middle of going through the whole merger process of becoming Funimation.
Right.
So we were and I think that was also the first year Anime Lab, because it was just massive growth, we didn't shut it down, I think. But then somehow after that, strategy changed, and like we're closing down Anime Lab. That was the first time that I think people in Australia experienced that merger of Anime Lab is closing down and we're going to merge with Funimation. And that happened. But as that was happening, AT&T, Time Warner were wanting to sell Crunchyroll.
Yep.
I
had many subscriptions at one point, and I'm like, who's going to win?
Yeah. Exactly, right? So then Sony Pictures ended up bidding for it and won. We were all kind of laughing and going like, yeah, right, $1 billion. Who's going to pay $1 billion for an anime company? Turns out Sony did.
Yeah.
Sony did.
And what do you think has been the biggest, apart from the money and the change and just the proliferation of the medium, what do you think's changed amongst the fandom at all? Or do you think it's still, the crux of it is still that fanatic kind of, people who just live for this thing and will go to whatever ends they can to find the thing they love? Do you think that element's still there, or do you think that's kind of changed?
Oh, I think that element's never going to go away.
Yeah.
It's just that, as we kind of talked about earlier in the podcast, the lack of discoverability, it was so hard to discover things. You would almost hold on to things a bit more. You would cherish that title the show that you discovered.
Yes.
That you felt special. It's not as much of that, I feel like, these days.
Yes.
However, in saying that, I think that ultimately this was the goal that we all wanted at the whole industry wanted at the end of the day, where anime is now mainstream. You're no longer being picked on in the playground for liking anime. It's actually kind of cool.
I still am.
I think generally speaking, though, it's a hell of a lot better than what it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, that more and more people are jumping onto this thing, and it's just more just entertainment now, which I think it's fabulous. And
Oh yeah.
there are more and more shows now that are gateways into this fandom. And I think that, in a way, you're almost seeing this phase now where people are also shifting away from just purely consuming anime only. We've now seen in the last, I'd say, half a decade, really, and especially more so in the West, because this has always been a thing in Asia, the anime culture. The Japan and anime culture kind of like really becoming mainstream, where you've got people that are, they'll casually watch Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan and Sword Art Online or whatever the casual shows, or My Hero Academia, whatever the mainstream kind of shows are. But then they don't touch some of the other things, which is okay. But then they're all into the culture of it.
Yes.
They're getting into it and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's great because it's something that has really fueled the acceptance of culture
Yes.
globally, of anime culture globally, and I think that's a positive thing. It's different I think to what it was like, back in the skunks of setting off mail order checks for VHS tapes that you have no idea if it was ever going to arrive, to now there are multiple anime stores, not just one. Whereas back in the day in Sydney, you had literally one.
Yep.
There are multiple stores now, and there are more and more availability, more and more acceptance, and it just growing.
Absolutely.
We're still catching up to Asia, obviously.
Yes. And even
but
the US for us.
yeah, but I think we're actually pretty good,
Very much
all things considered, to what it was, and to the point now where you've got all these Japanese companies also investing in coming out to Australia and Japanese restaurants and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned we interviewed on another podcast last week or the week before, and I was saying that I literally was driving past on a bus. Well, no, I was driving in a car, but past a bus stop in Dulwich Hill, and Spy Family was on the bus stop. I was like, what? Like, it blew. I mean, I'm just down the office as well. There was a Jujutsu Kaisen thing. I kind of get that a bit more. It's like you see that.
Yeah,
I've seen that around a bit.
Stumbling out of the pub and came face to face with Gojo on a wall outside of Porto, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing here, man?" But like, so it was just actually just in the middle of Newtown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like,
it's amazing how much it has proliferated and how, becoming so much more mainstream. And you look at the box office. Demon Slayer was a huge hit, obviously. Slam Dunk, which you guys brought out earlier this year, absolutely extraordinary and like such a good piece of
my
media.
favorite movie of this year so far has been Slam Dunk.
Oh,
It
great.
was so good.
It was so fantastic. Thank you so much for reminding us.
Yes.
I have a review of it where I rave about it, but I went into it not having ever watched Slam Dunk or read it, so it was fun to kind of see a film that worked in itself. Like it's fantastic.
Look, that movie took 30 years to make.
Yeah.
And you can kind of understand now why Inoue Sensei took so long to get it to that point, because he the story goes is that he was very much unhappy with I guess animation and the technology of animation back when he was trying to make it 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
To the point now where like, okay, this is great. You see how it was animated, and you're like, you felt like you were watching an NBA game.
Oh, it was incredible.
rather than some sort of a movie.
Yeah. Oh, it was-
if more the basketball scenes, but obviously there was a lot of the story as well. But it looked great, and it was also I think there was. When the initial trailers and stuff came out for that, there was a lot of criticism of the way it looked as well. But then when you
that's
actually
not like the anime community at all.
no, because it was it's CG and all that kind of stuff. It's like, actually, just give it a chance, guys. And I think once you get into it, the story. Look, end of the day, what is anime? It's a medium for telling stories, and what is Slam Dunk? An amazing story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was one of those people that when I saw the trailers, I was like, I don't know if I like the style. And then I quickly ate my words as soon as I sat down.
As soon as you sat down and watched it, you're like,
yeah, 100%.
It's just, give it a shot. But back to you, obviously. So you now work for Sugoi Co.
Yes.
What is Sugoi Co?
Yeah, so Sugoi Co was founded by Tim Anderson, who, as I've kind of talked through the story, is also the founder of Madman back in the day. And he had left Crunchyroll a couple of years ago. And I had left Crunchyroll a bit earlier this year, and we felt like there was enough of a gap in the market that, perhaps that Crunchyroll were, the strategy's completely shifted, and we were like, look, we feel like there's still something here. We feel like, I also feel like I don't want to, let go of the 20 plus years of work that I've put into building up the, the scene here. And
Absolutely.
I feel like I still got a lot to contribute for that. Yeah. And we decided to start a new company, and thus that's how Sugoi Co was born. And this was back in May, I think, when I kind of joined the company, and we didn't really become public until around July. But we feel like that there is enough for us to be able to still give fans here locally some excitement, and also to release things that perhaps some of the other companies are not releasing here as well. Mm-hmm. And just to kind of keep things going, because we feel like that, anime fans here are, they deserve to have a lot of things, a lot of titles that may not get a chance might get released here. And we feel like that we can help to deliver an alternative approach to how things are released in Australia, and to continue on with, I guess, some of the legacy work that we've done as well at Madman and at Crunchyroll as well. I think that, with the releases that we've done so far, they've all been theatrical so far. That is something that we want to continue on, We feel like there's, theatrically speaking, as you said, these things like Demon Slayer. Here's a bit of fact for you. Over the since 2020, since the pandemic, there've actually been more than $10 million of box office of anime just in Australia.
Wow.
Would you believe that there's that is made? Yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, that made $2.2 million. One Piece made $1.3 million last year. Red made that, and then also just earlier this year when you shove 3 episodes of Demon Slayer together.
Yeah. I'll go see it.
Still made $1 million in Australia.
Wow.
Which is, blows your mind. And Demon Slayer itself, back in the day was $4.5 million.
Wow.
In terms of box office. These are public figures, by the way. I'm not giving any kind of secrets away.
You can Google these.
Yeah. But they are numbers that were not really, they were kind of unthinkable back in the day.
Oh.
And that's why we were like, we built an audience up. It'd be a shame that we can't, if some of these other titles aren't being released.
Yeah.
And we kind of all want to continue on doing this thing that we do. Obviously we're nowhere near as big as what we used to be, but we're at the start of our journey, and I feel like we've got a long way to go in order to continue to build what Sugoi Co can be. And we're expanding as well. We're doing things now like brand licensing.
Yep.
So if we're licensing out things like I think like stores like Culture Kings, for example, they have their own line of anime T-shirts and stuff. Some of that's done through us.
Right.
Licensing is done through us, and there's a lot of other brands out there as well. JJ's and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yep.
Some of that kind of going through us now as well. And then also we feel like there's still also, it's a tiny amount of people still want to own titles.
It's interesting. I wanted to bring that up with you because obviously now with how much streaming there is, and going back from where this kind of all began in the West, right? Like owning something, and I know it's a big thing for film people too, especially now with a lot of titles just disappearing from streaming platforms sometimes. And it's not so much in anime, but it does happen. I think it's almost going to come back around. Would you agree that's sort of something that people will start doing again because things can just disappear off platforms very easily?
I think maybe, but I think it's also at the same time, you've got a platform like Crunchyroll where you do have vast amounts of content on there that it's getting harder to find really what it is that you kind of want to own. I think that the AAA blockbusters out there are still worthwhile owning, or if it's some sort of a film by a very special, director or something like that.
Satoshi Kon film or something.
Yeah, something like that. I feel like, we're, Slam Dunk, I think, will probably end up being our first home entertainment release.
Right.
So that's a scoop.
Right.
We do have rights to do that. So we will release that, on Blu-ray sometime, next year, but we're not announcing anything quite yet.
3.
We're not announcing dates or anything like that, but it is coming. We do feel like there's, that ownership thing is still a thing. Obviously, we're no longer where we were at the peak of Blu-ray and DVD ownership, when it kind of went up and it's still on that very much on that downward trajectory. But at the same time, we feel like there's enough support out there that, it's not dead yet.
No.
It's dying,
Yes.
and it will continue to be dying over the next God knows how many years. But I think we're only really at the beginning of that wrap up of that owning that on medium.
Yeah.
And I still feel like the classics out there that people will still want to preserve that in the future.
I think you need to do a whole line of VHSs. To be honest, like people brought back like the big vinyl. Why not just bring back some
back
VHSs?
Honestly,
Like,
Absolutely.
We did contemplate doing that.
oh hell yeah!
For when I was back in Crunchyroll, Madman, we had contemplated on perhaps, there's an anniversary for this movie coming up. Maybe we can press a VHS copy of it so that people will want to own a copy of it. We kind of looked into the cost of pressing VHS. It is not cheap.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
It is not cheap to press a VHS anymore. Like even the price of pressing DVDs and Blu-rays now are kind of slightly going back up because the demand's kind of gone down as well, globally speaking.
It's kind of hard to find a VHS player now if you don't have one, right?
No,
Is
that's just it. It's almost just a display piece almost rather than anything else. And
Antique.
Nah, bring it back. It sounds cool.
Yeah.
But I mean,
just put a VHS, then put a downloadable code so they can watch it online. Like, just sit on the shelf. It looks
It's a QR code on it.
QR code in the box.
the collector's markets, something which I think will be heavily on the DVDs because again, or Blu-rays more specifically, I think, because I know a lot of film buffs are now moving into that, like owning as many Blu-rays as possible and whatnot. But yeah, I think it is a niche market. But in time, I think they'll become pretty worth some serious money.
Look, I agree, and I think people should definitely go out there and still buy the things. I think it's the special shows that they feel have good special connection to. Go out and buy it because nothing lasts forever.
Yeah,
is that's what it is in this licensing business. Is that nothing lasts forever. Rights have a limited amount of time available, and I think that's the common misconception.
Yes.
Back in the day, where I think when your younger fans might not know how this stuff works, is actually when you're licensing titles, it's not for it's not for perpetuity, not for forever. It's only ever for a certain period of time.
Yes,
a lifetime is not really a lifetime when you think about it.
for sure.
And people are so angry when Netflix, particularly when Netflix are like, we're swapping shows over. Everyone's like, why? It's like, because they ran out of the licensing. Like, people don't understand how that works. It's like,
exactly.
And it's that thing I think people don't understand is that as well when you also, you own a copy of something.
Yes,
Technically speaking, you're buying a license to watch that thing.
you're renting it essentially.
Essentially,
Long term,
which is but where does that kind of all come from? You have to go back to the old days of, well, what is this really? It's you going to a movie theater and buying a ticket and watching a movie. You're not going to say, "Hey, I bought a movie ticket. I'm going to go back and watch it again." No, you have to buy another ticket. You have to buy another ticket, right? That's how you have to think about the concept of streaming, and that you have to keep paying every month. I still want to watch Attack on Titan on Crunchyroll on Netflix or whatever, I keep paying that. How much it is per month.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I need to own because I cannot find it outside. It's very hard to find Legends of Galactic Heroes, obviously. You think
it's on High Dive.
God, every episode.
It's literally on High Dive.
No, but I want to own it
Okay.
because I need to. That's my next Blu-ray. I'm going to buy a Blu-ray player.
Send a check off
already-
it to America. You'll find 3 months.
Well, I already own Black Cat, so I'm sorted. So we're good.
Started the collection.
We've got this.
No, it is amazing how far it's come. And honestly, Sly, thank you for being one of the major reasons that we are able to enjoy anime in the way that we are now in this country. And honestly, what you've done is pretty extraordinary. And I don't think people really know that much. But honestly, what you've done is quite extraordinary, man. So you should be incredibly proud.
Thank you. And also just what a fascinating conversation that was. It's stuff that I kind of knew about surface level. I knew about Madman starting, but I didn't know about the inner workings of it and just seeing how it all kind of changed everything. So thanks for having a great chat with us because I learned a lot about the industry.
I feel like I'm just digging to the surface of it as well. So
Part two.
Part two. I need to back on sometime. But no, honestly, man, thank you so much for joining us. It's incredible to learn how anime has progressed and evolved in Australia for the last 20 odd years and where it will go in the future. It's so exciting. We've still got so much room for growth as Sugoi obviously knows.
the future is bright, and I'm not going anywhere. So
Nice.
Absolutely.
We thank everyone and the fans. And look, we're not here without the fans, so we want to continue to build that fan base and really just ask for the support and what we do with Sugoi Co and also anything else as well. I feel like just consume anime that you want to consume it and enjoy it the way that you want to enjoy it. No one can tell you that you can't enjoy it that way or this way, or you have to enjoy it this way or that way. Just enjoy anime for what it is. Enjoy the culture. Be a casual. Be hardcore. It doesn't matter. Just so long as you enjoy anime, that's all that matters.
100%. It's why we started this podcast. It's
Great.
Exactly right. And thank you so much. And thank you all for listening and or watching as always. Of course, you can find us on our social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us on any podcast platform, wherever you get your podcasts. If you really like what we're doing, you can find us on Patreon, and every little bit helps. We really appreciate it. And thank you all so much. We'll catch you all next time. Sly, thank you once again for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Enjoy your trip to Japan.
Thank you.
Make sure you check out Sugoi online to have the latest releases that are coming out. Is there anything you want to plug right now while we're here?
I guess Sugoi Co. We actually just started a new shop as well, so e-commerce shop. So sugoi.shop, very easy URL to remember. Follow us on our social media. Sugoi Co AU is it's at Sugoi Co AU. All platforms are just Sugoi Co AU, and I think that we've got something lined up for next year, so I feel like you should follow us on there to be the first to find out what that is.
Just take my money already. Just let me get my wallet out.
No, we've been to a few of the releases so far this year, and they've been absolutely fantastic. And
Great.
Thank you very much. We'll be hopefully going to some more and checking them all out, and you can too by following. And thanks so much. We'll catch you all next time. All the best.